David Taub here, co-creator of NextLevelGuitar.com. Hope all is well, and I hope your guitar journeys are going famously. And today what I have for you are some practice tips. I got like 10 or 15 tips. This is for all levels. We'll start off with the easier ones. Just a couple quick side notes. That remember, as you're working on your lead guitar journey, you don't want to neglect your rhythm playing. It's so important. We all want to burn on solos, and we all want to play fast and melodic and cool and come up with the great sounding solos and stuff. But just remember that solos are only small pieces of songs, right? You're mainly, as a guitar player, for the most part, are going to be playing rhythm. So you want to keep doing all those things with your rhythm playing. You know, you want to keep working on your timing and your strumming and your rhythm, and you want to keep working, you know, with a metronome, and you want to keep learning new chords and embellishments and progressions. And, you know, it's just so often neglected because we spend so much time on our soloing. So your lead playing is really only ever going to be as good as your rhythm playing. One of the first things that I always tell my students as far as a practice tip is schedule it. Write it down on your schedules. If you don't have a planner book, get one and ink it down. You'll be so much more apt to do it if you write it down. The other thing is, you know, you have to be very diligent about dividing up your practice time into segments. Maybe spend, you know, the first 10 minutes on rhythm, the next 10 or 15 minutes on lead, and then you break that into subsets, you know, working on whatever it is you need to work on in your guitar journey, whether it be your techniques like string bending or learning some new scales or working over jam tracks. You know, set aside some time to work on your tone and to play through your amp, right? Set aside some time to investigate gear. And that's important because if you don't kind of break up your practice routine, then it's very easy, especially with all our distractions that we have in the modern world, to get sidetracked, and we spend all our time watching YouTube videos on the latest gear. But limit it and schedule it and break up the practice so you're hitting everything. Put apart time for songwriting, right? And working on coming up with creative things. Again, you're scheduling your practice time, and then you're breaking it into subsets. Another thing you want to do in your practice routine is you want to try to, a couple minutes a day, try to get the notes on the neck down. Learn all the notes on the neck. And I know that's hard, and a lot of students, you know, are off put by doing it, but I'm telling you, it makes such a big difference. You'll know what notes make up which chords. It'll help you with your songwriting. It'll help you land on certain hip notes when you're soloing. It's such a big deal, and so many students bypass that stuff, and so many people make it so much harder than it is. It's very easy, and if you need help with that, I get my ebook. I have the neck diagrammed out, every note, and some tips on how to learn that, and it's free. So click on that link in the YouTube description box. You'll get a free video lesson on lead guitar playing where you're using a lot of this stuff we're talking about, and you'll get that ebook. And that ebook has tons of stuff in it that'll help you with your practice, and I'll mention some more as we go. But one of them is I have the neck diagram and how to go about learning those notes on the neck, so be sure you check that out. As you're noodling around on the guitar, always know what key you're in. That's going to help you too. It's kind of almost will make it into your subconscious that you'll know the key you're soloing in. Very important. We have to talk about the building blocks of lead guitar, which are basically scales, right? Scales are what we use to build our riffs, to build our licks, to build our solo. So with lead guitar, you got to learn some scales. But just don't learn the scale alone. That's another critical practice thing that so many students fall trap of. Someone just teaches a scale and that's it, and you just learn that. You just don't want to learn the scale. First of all, you want to learn the notes that make up the scale, so you're just not learning shapes. Too many guitar players just know shapes. That's not enough. You just don't want to know the shape. You want to know how to connect it with other scale. You want to know the notes that make up that scale. This is all critical information that'll just help you be a better musician, help you speak the language of music. But you also want to know how to apply that scale, how to use it, right? Learning the scale is only half the battle. You could know every scale ever created, ever built by man, but if you don't know how to use it in a musical situation, what good is it, right? So you just don't want to learn scale. You want to know what chords they work over what key can you use them. Learn the scale, but also learn how to apply it musically. Start off with the minor pentatonic scale, because that's probably the most common scale used in most genres of music, except maybe classical. And start with that basic box shape that everybody knows, right? And if you don't know that yet, again, get that ebook, because I have all the pentatonic scales diagrammed out all over the neck. Click on that link below. You want to learn the basic box shape, yes, but then learn all the shapes that run across the neck, and then learn the expanded scales. Those are the scales I teach where we connect the shapes together, and you start playing horizontally across the neck and not just vertically up and down, right? You want to play across the neck. It's a lot more fluid sounding than just staying and getting hemmed into one box. You can also learn the blues scale by adding that blue note, because that's important for blues and rock. And again, I have all those scales diagrammed out in the ebook: pentatonics, blues scales across the whole neck, expanded scales. And those are really going to help you because you start to see the neck visually as one big scale and not just as these individual boxes. Start with that. And as you're beginning your lead guitar journey, you want to get comfortable in soloing in major key and minor key. And there's modal keys too, but 95% of the time you're going to be soloing in major key and minor key. So you got to learn how to solo in both. Pentatonic scales will give you that in the beginning. So you want to also, besides learning your minor pentatonic scales, you want to learn how to flip those into major pentatonic scales. And it's very easy, because you don't have to learn a whole new set of scales. We're just going to flip what you already know and learn the principle of major and relative minor. I'm also a big believer that finger exercises really help. They help tie your left and right hands together. They help your fingers become more strong and more dexterous. Remember, the stronger your fret hand, I'm a big believer in, the more you could do with the notes, the more bending, the more stretching. The more tone you're going to have, right? So finger exercises are important. You want to do those 5 to 7 minutes a day. They'll help your picking. I have tons of them on the website. Don't go overboard with them, and there's tons of them out there, so you can mix them up. 5 minutes a day is plenty. Then once you learn some scales, right, and you're doing your finger exercise, you can start doing things with the notes. You want to start working on things like technique, right? You want to start working on things like bending and vibrato and hammers and pull-offs, and getting your technique down. That's going to be a big part of your sound. How you're attacking those strings, how you're bending them, how you're laying into them, how you are attaching your licks together into phrasing. That all goes into your tone, right? What makes you sound like you. So you want to spend part of your practice on working on things like string bending, bending in pitch. Remember, every time you bend a string, you're bending it to a target note. Usually it's the next note in the scale, and you want to make sure you're matching that pitch. You're not overbending it or underbending it, sound out of key. So you want to practice, have a few minutes a day, work on your vibrato. So important. Your vibrato is like your fingerprint. You can really identify a player by their vibrato. Working on your hammers and pulls, working on your techniques that go into how you work the notes. Because it's not just the notes you play or what you pick from the scales, but how you play them, right? What you're doing to those notes, how you're playing them in a musical way and making them sound musically interesting. And you want to apply them, apply what you're learning, apply the scales. And you do that by practicing over jam tracks. And that's so critical. You really want to have some of your lead practice time working over jam tracks in various tempos, in different keys, different chord changes, right? And that's how you're really going to hone your craft and refine your art. Practicing over jam tracks is invaluable. I can't say that enough, because as opposed to just noodling around by yourself, here you'll have chords going on underneath, and you'll want to target certain notes in those chords to make strong solo statements, and you'll have to be playing in time. You'll have a rhythm section behind you. Leave lots of space for your notes to breathe, and you can't do things like that just noodling around on your own, right? You need that musical kind of pathway underneath you, that pad, right, to practice on top of. You want to really work on looking at those tracks, not just the key. Look at the chords that are going on underneath, what's playing on that track, chordal-wise, and that's what's going to give you the roadmap to what you can use soloing and improvisation-wise. The chords are what give you the roadmap, not just the key. The key's only part of it, so you got to look at the chords. So any tracks you get, good jam tracks will also come with what's the progression. You don't want to get tracks and have that left out. What are the chords being played? Because remember, we're studying our scales and what scales sound good over which chords, what sounds best to your ears. And speaking of ears, another thing is you really want to develop your ear. One of the most important things you could do as a musician. Get all the ear training lessons, ear training materials you can get your hands on, and really develop that ear. So as a batting order, after you're working on your major and minor pentatonic scales and you know them up and down the neck, right? Then start to tackle things like your full-on diatonic scales, like your major scales and your natural minor scales. Those scales are critical. You'll be using those all the time, and learn those up and down the neck and learn those in various keys and practice those over jam tracks. Then after you get those down, then you want to start getting into the modes of the major scale. And that's where things really start to open up the fretboard. A lot of people just stop at minor pentatonic, and I don't understand why. I mean, I guess if that's like what you like and you don't want to go any further, okay. There's so many different ways of doing this. This is just the way that I have found that my students really progress quickly, and I'm trying to impart some of that knowledge, and hopefully it'll help you in your guitar journey. But there's so many different ways. I'm just giving you one path. And I strongly suggest looking at the modes of the major scale, because each of those modes give you a different mood and a different sound, and it's really all about the sounds. It's all about the sounds and what sounds best to your ears. And if you're a blues guy, blues rock guy, metal guy, you definitely want to start investing some time into learning the modes in your practice routine. Good ones to start off with is natural minor, which is also called Aeolian mode. You'll be using that all the time. Also Dorian, the second mode in any major key. Natural minor is the sixth mode. You also want to look at Mixolydian, especially if you're playing a lot of seventh chords, like in blues, you'll be using Mixolydian a lot. Phrygian, I love Phrygian too. It gives you a very exotic sound. Other things you could do in your lead guitar journey that I think have a lot of value would be just to learn some triads and some arpeggios, and learn how to move those around on a neck. Learn them in different positions. Learn them. Start off with arpeggios. The easiest ones to learn at first are roots on the low E string and the A string, sixth and fifth string arpeggios. Triads, you could start learning your basic major and minor. Triads, they're super helpful, super melodic. You could get into songwriting, get into building your leads off of triads. Study and learn some of the leads of your favorite guitar players. We're all amalgamates of our influences, and we kind of put our own spin on it, a heavy dose of you, and you make it your own. So you want to take some of those solos of some of your favorite players and study them, pull them apart, find out why they work, right? Why you like that, why it sounds good to your ears, and then put your own twist on it and kind of make it your own. To sum it all up, I think this kind of encapsulates a lot of what I just kind of went over. In this stage of your lead guitar journey, there's just no substitute for practicing the right things, scheduling your practice time, breaking it up into sections, learning scales, studying the sounds and the relationships between chords and scales, developing your ear, practicing and honing your skills using jam tracks, and continually pushing yourself to that next level, continually refining your art and honing your skills. And that's a big thing on guitars. You have to push yourself into the uncomfortable zone, right? Just don't want to keep doing things that you're comfortable with and that you're really good at. Push yourself into that uncharted waters, right? It's hard work, but so worth it. And that's how you get better. Keep pushing yourself. So I hope these practice tips help you along in your guitar journey. Remember, you can't learn less. Remember, your guitar playing is an evolution, and it takes time. Chip away at it. And also subscribe. Please subscribe to the channel. That really helps us to keep bringing the content. Spread the word about this channel. I want to thank you for your support over the years. I wish you the best in your guitar journey. Keep putting that guitar in your hands every day. Keep on rocking. I will see you in the next lesson. Rock on.